Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and tonight I'm joined by Chris McElwain, where we're going to be streaming on the YouTube channel, X, Facebook, Twitch, LinkedIn, Instagram, everywhere you can stream. We are streaming this evening. And we're here to talk about Celtic's first pre-season game of the new campaign. It was Ayr United 1, Celtic 1, virtue of two penalties. And, it's just a typical first pre-season game, isn't it, Chris? I mean, there was a complete change to the lineup in the second half. Gives you an opportunity to see some of the fringe players. And I think that if you want to analyse the game properly, you do it with the caveat of saying that we are looking at this in isolation. We're not looking at it and saying that our mind's made up on X, Y, or Z due to tonight's performance. We've got to look at tonight's performance and analyse it after the game and react to it. But obviously, you could have a bad game tonight and go on to have a sterling Celtic career in the future. But we are going to be talking about some of the players we were impressed with, some who we were disappointed with. Overall, it was a training game. It was a bounce match. That was the whole purpose of it. And it showed.
It did. It did. But look, I mean, first of all, I think I want to give a bit of credit to Ayr United because I didn't think they played it like a friendly. I think they played it like a pre-season prep game, and it looks to me like Bruni's got them well drilled. So credit to them. They put their all into that match tonight, and I thought they did well, all things considered. Look, we're not basing what we expect to see at the start of the season on tonight. We know that there are changes afoot. We know that a lot of these players are very much on the fringes, but there were certainly a few things that were interesting tonight, particularly in that second half where we actually saw a completely changed team. Thought that was a little bit of a shame because I would have liked to have seen more of Holm. I would have liked to have seen more of Derry, as we mentioned at half time. I think that I wasn't sure it was the right thing to do to take those guys out of the out of the firing line, as it were. I would like to have seen them get more minutes and continue what they're doing. However, a couple of things in the second half which really stood out for me. I thought Bosa and Lael came in and did not disappoint. First team ready, based on that, you can't possibly tell. But what I did see there was evidence of a player who has developed over the past year. Physically, his movement, his assurance, self-assurance on the ball. I thought he really tried to lead and drive from the middle of the park. I thought, aside from maybe losing his man at the header that Ayr nearly scored, I thought he was very composed and looked really, really good. So I'd like to see more of him in pre-season because I think he is potentially the closest of the fringe players to knocking on the first team door. And look, I know he gave up the penalty in the first half. I think we may have seen, and again, not basing anything on tonight, but if it was taking tonight's game in isolation, I would call Lenny Agba a rough diamond. Similar to Lael in physicality, stature, strength, height, and used those attributes really, really well. Definitely got a mistake in him. He's raw. Right? He's really raw. He's a bit erratic. But by virtue of the way Ayr played tonight, we were under pressure for a fair amount of that second half. And consequently, Agba got a lot of time on the ball. He was called into action quite a lot. And I tell you, the one thing I really liked about him is even when he made a mistake, the willingness to get back and get back on the ball or remedy the mistake. I really, really liked that. I was that. He's 19 years old, but I think that's the difference that going from being 17 to 19 does in terms of that maturity and confidence in your own ability. We're talking about the young boy Kyle, and I think you maybe saw it with Hatton in that second half as well. Willingness, but maybe not necessarily having the confidence or wanting to take the initiative. Whereas I thought Agba really, he didn't shirk the responsibility in any way, shape, or form. Couple of last-ditch tackles. I mean, I think if you put him up against European opposition, God, we'd have given up about 20 penalties tonight. But at the same time, there's a player there tonight, just purely based on tonight, that I think you could develop. I think there's elements there that I think you can develop. So was really impressed with him, really impressed with Lael. Really liked running of Mitchell Frame, but by God, son, remember to pass it to a guy in a green shirt. I mean, I would love to have Al on to see what the pass completion stats were for Mitchell Frame, because as much as he was great on the ball, carried it forward again, took that initiative, he really struggled to pick out any of our players. Now, again, I don't know if some of that was the fact that Hatton maybe wasn't reading the play quite as well. If we're talking about disappointments, and I appreciate I'm going on a bit here, so I'll stop shortly. But if we talk about disappointments, O and Yang, for me, should have done more to try and drive those young boys forward and help out.
Yep.
I saw real contrast from, say, Kyogo and Holm in the first half, who a lot of running movement. Kuhn as well, want to pick up the ball, coming deep, coming into positions to help the young guys out. O and Yang didn't do any of that for me in the second half. I was really, really disappointed, because these are guys who do have something to prove.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, based on that first game, and I know it's first game and we're not judging anybody on that, I thought they dropped the ball. I really did. So really, really disappointed in those two in particular. Kwon showed moments. You could tell he's been out on loan and had a season, and I felt as though he did a little bit better. Last word, take a bow, Josh Clark. What a save that was. Good on you, son. Really, really good. So, yeah, again, another player I'd maybe like to see a wee bit more from. But, yeah, no issues with the result. Just means that me and you aren't allowed to do predictions for the rest of the season. I think that's maybe the...
No, that's not a bad idea, actually, Chris. I'm going to pick up on some of the points you've made, expand on them, throw them out to the audience, see what you think. And the comments are coming through. I think that Boston Lael has impressed quite a lot of the Celtic fan base. Big Boston did well. But we've been looking forward to seeing him, because, you look at a loan deal for a player, a development loan. That we know that it's a development loan. And he's gone to Fleetwood, and he's done exactly what you want him to do. Over a period of a season, he's played the games, he's impressed the managers he's played under, including tonight's opposition manager, Scott Brown, and also Charlie Adam. He comes back, and the development, and I know we're playing a championship team tonight, and I know it's a friendly, but the development that you've seen in that player tonight, I'm going to take that as the biggest plus point of tonight's game. And if we take nothing else, and there is a few other wee positives that I want to talk about, but I think you've got in Boston Lael a player who, obviously the manager will see him on a day-to-day basis, but he looks as though he could step up. And I know that a lot of people over the last wee while, when we've been talking about him, have been saying that, come on, get real, he's been playing third-tier English football. But Matt O'Reilly made the transition to Celtic from the third tier of English football. And every single challenge that was thereafter put in front of him, be that, right, you're up against Rangers, smashed it. Champions League, smashed it. Under 21 for Denmark, did the same. Step up to national team, did the same. So I think that Lael, and obviously Lael has already sat on the bench for the Republic of Ireland, his progress over the last 12 months is exactly why you put players out on a development loan. I'm not getting overexcited for anybody who thinks something that I am. 45 minutes is not going to tell us exactly what we need to know. But based on the 45, he does look as though he's come on leaps and bounds. He looks like a guy who the only way you'll get the ball off him is by bundling him over. Ayr United done it a few times tonight. It's almost like they couldn't get near him. He's one of the guys who've got that, almost, he can protect the ball just because of the strength of him, the tight, close ball control. He makes up yards really, really quickly, deceptively fast. Because I remember people saying one of the issues was his pace. I never saw an issue tonight with his pace. So I totally agree with Irishman and Porto and some of the other commenters coming through. Big Boston did do well. Now, every season, write a list of guys that I think should leave, and also have a list of players that I think should go out on loan. Guys who I think have got something, but maybe not just now for Celtic. And Boston Lael was on that loan list, because I felt that what we should do with him now is send him out for another year, but at a higher level than League One in England, third tier English football. Let's get him to maybe the second tier English football and see if he can step up there. But Brendan Rodgers might have a look at him during this pre-season, Chris, and say, you know what? you could be there or thereabouts in man midfield and keep him at the club. I think I'm on the fence with him now.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think first and foremost, and I can see some of the comments, I agree, we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves based on one game, right? And I want to make that really clear. What he's done tonight has given me, certainly as a fan, an appetite to see him in the next few pre-season games, to see what he can bring to the table. I think if he consistently performs in those pre-season games, then Brendan might have a decision to make. And of course, it could depend on what's happening behind the scenes in terms of recruitment, right? We don't know who Brendan's trying to bring in, and whether there would even be an opportunity for Bosun to come in and get a run. I mean, I think all things being equal, if we don't have outgoings like Matt O'Reilly leaving, which we're all kind of keeping our fingers crossed that he doesn't, our settled midfield three is Calmac, Hatate, and O'Reilly. But Bosun Lael, for me, could potentially be someone that comes in there, but he's competing with guys like Holm again for a midfield berth, Awata, guys who've maybe had more exposure to first team football. So I think you're right. I think let's see what he does for the remainder of pre-season, if he gets chances and if he takes those chances. And let's trust the manager to determine how best to continue his development. But I agree, I think the difference a season of football is made, being played consistently in a side, in his preferred position. Because we remember last pre-season, we were playing him, in central defence.
Yep.
And I think even tonight, as we've seen, it's maybe not necessarily his strength as a central defender. He did get caught for that, for the air chance. But what he gave throughout that 45 minutes, for me, just makes me want to see more of him. I'm keen to see more of him. I certainly think there's a better player there, ready to break out. So really, really pleased to see him.
But what you were saying there, yeah, we're basing it on tonight's performance. We're not getting overly hyped about anybody. And at the same time, I'm not going to look at an under 18 player who's come into the squad tonight and write them off. Absolutely, no. I'm not going to do that. But I think you can then have a judgment on players that we've seen a lot of, let's say, last season. I think you can make comment, and I will, on players like Yang and who you've already mentioned. I'm going to throw Nawrocki in there. I'm even going to throw Kwon in there, because I think that, when you're playing a championship team, I want you to absolutely boss it. I'm looking at Kwon and I'm thinking to myself, right, we paid £1 million for you, mate, right? Bosun Lael did what you should be doing. You should be absolutely orchestrating that midfield. And he never came anywhere near it. There was 2 balls that he played down the wing. Actually, Yang should have done a hell of a lot better. We'll come back to him. But other than those 2 balls, I'm looking at Kwon thinking, right, if I'm looking at the pecking order, I agree with you. Your first 3 picks is Riho Tate, Callum McGregor, Matt O'Reilly. Beyond that, you've then got last season it was Bernardo, he's no longer at the club. You've then got Awata. And then beyond Awata, who do you have? And you've probably got guys like Holm, Kwon coming back into the squad, Lael. Tonight, based on tonight, Lael's above Kwon. In fact, based on tonight, Lael's above Awata. But we know that Awata's done pretty well last season when he's come in. So, I think that if you're going to put a judgment on any of these players, the ones I've been disappointed with are guys that we've seen a wee bit of already. And you're looking at it tonight and you're thinking, you've got to do a lot more to bring guys like under 18 players who are coming in to make their debuts and bring them up. You've got to run the show and let them maybe work off the periphery of the game and come into it and hopefully build their confidence. So Lael, absolutely brilliant tonight. Yeah, I want to see more of him. I want to see him playing over in America with the bigger tests over there.
Absolutely.
You mentioned Agba, right? And I think we've seen more of him than anybody else tonight because of the injury to Nawrocki. He is a quandary. He really is a quandary. I mean, you think about a player like Dedrick Boyata, right? By the way, no comparing them. Come on, I've only seen the guy for about 70 minutes here.
That's it. Yeah, I can't wait to see the comments.
I know.
You've done it.
Boyata, it could be brilliant and have your heart in your mouth all in the same game, right?
Yeah.
He's the type of guy who ended up playing for Belgium when they were ranked 3rd best team in the world, and he was playing for them. Yeah, he could be a bomb scare, and he could, and we've seen it. And sometimes when he put his foot in the ball, he just thought, no, don't do that. release the ball, get rid of the ball. And Agba in that game that I saw tonight, I saw a player who looked really composed 1 minute, and then the next minute he could have given away a penalty as he did. He could give away possession. He could be harsh in the tackle. He could lose the ball, then win it back with a great recovery tackle. So I think you described him as a rough diamond. And again, I'm not writing him off because of the age of him. He's never played first team football. If he's been playing Lowland League, to play a championship club is quite a jump from tier 5 to tier 2.
Oh, yes.
So overall, I think you look at his performance and you think, right, you're not quite there yet, but you did okay tonight. You did okay.
He is, for me, and again, purely based on tonight, but I'd like to see him again more throughout the pre-season. There were just elements of him I really liked. I really, really liked some things he did tonight, but there were other things I thought, if you're up against, and again, all due respect to United, but if you're up against better opposition, and we're playing some big teams out in the States, he makes that great last-ditch tackle, the one that he goes right across the player. And you're thinking, this is a problem, right? Because that, but he lets the ball run past, but he times it well and he gets it across. But I'm thinking, if that's Man City, for example, you've got De Bruyne just latching onto that and running through and scoring. So being realistic about what I've seen, but the element I liked of him is that he didn't shirk the responsibility. He didn't, he gave away a penalty tonight, which cost us a goal, but he didn't let his head go down. He was in there, he was fighting for every ball. I think he showed quite good pace. He's got decent height. Timing's a bit off in the jumps, but he's got good height and decent ability in the air. So I really think there's a player there, but he, for me, would be a prime candidate for a loan. Let him, he's 19 years old, let him follow the same approach that Bosun Lael did. Get him down to maybe a more adaptable level of football. Let him get a consistent run in a team. Let him build up a partnership, build up his defensive awareness, and work on those elements where he's a bit erratic, and then bring him back and assess him again. So that is what I seen based on that 60 odd or 70 odd minutes that he got tonight. So, but he was a fun player to watch tonight. I'm going to be honest. He was a fun player to watch. I mean, he certainly wouldn't be boring with him in the team.
Never a dull moment. We spoke about in, I think it was a pre-match, but we spoke about the fact that we could have arrangements with certain teams whereby there's partnerships and we can send players to them. And I think we've got to tap into, teams like Ayr United because of the Scott Brown link, teams like Rapid Bucharest because of Neil Lennon, and get 2 or 3 of the boys out on loan. But of course, we already have that partnership in Austria, don't we, with Admira Wacker. So right. I think that it would be wise. I think he is a prime candidate. I don't want to see him playing tier 5 football next season in Scotland in the Lowland League. I want Agba to go out there and really just, step up, make all your mistakes, make it all in a competitive game of football, and then come back maybe next pre-season and see if that rough diamond's been refined a wee bit. I think a big shout out to Dane Murray tonight. Comes on in the second half.
Actually, yeah.
Terrible injury problems. Yeah. I mean, horrific injury problems. That was a boy who came in as a kid under Ange, thrown in at the deep end because he near beat on getting sent off against Midtjylland. He played the remainder of the first leg. He then plays the second game. He done brilliantly. But then when he's gone back into the B team, he's had 2 operations. He's just signed a new deal. I mean, he wasn't an absolute standout tonight, but the very fact he was playing, and he was playing in a first-team game, I think, brilliant. It's great to see him back.
Yeah, and listen, I don't think Brendan, although, you can maybe make an argument when he did it with Anton Rodgers, but I don't think Brendan does too many token gestures, right? I don't think Dane Murray was in there for any other reason than the manager wants to have a look at him and see how he's progressing. So, terrible injury for such a young player, right at the outset of his career. Wish him nothing but the best. Hopefully, again, he gets maybe a few more runs out during pre-season. Is he ready for first team yet? Well, I don't think so. But again, maybe a player who's a candidate to go out on loan, consistent football, an injury-free season to really build not only his fitness back up, but his confidence and take his ability to the next level. But yeah, just great to see him back. I think ultimately a player's welfare is more important than anything. So yeah, fantastic.
Brilliant. There's a couple from the first half I want to talk about, a couple of positives, and then we'll have a wee look at some of the guys that's got to be doing better for Celtic, or indeed they might be out the door. Some of them, I think, sorry, they got 1 foot out the door, and one of those players is O. Irishman in Porto, you're back. O is for the off, is he not? Bain and Welsh are the proverbial quota players. Yes, there's definitely a deal in the offing with Genk. We're talking £4.2 million for O. Did he look like a £4.2 million player tonight? No chance. James Pearson, 88. The hype around Lael is very, very real. I want more of him. Deddy, Bonner, Frame and Hatton, I want to see more. Evaluate Kwon over the next 3 games. Something there. Thanks, James. Clark over Bain till the goalkeeper is sorted. Well, I think anybody over Siegrist. Siegrist is on the naughty step at the moment. There's no doubt about that. But let's dip back into the first half then, because you cannot forget the performance of Deddy. I mean, we've spoken about the right back position, and coming into this game with Alistair Johnston still at the Copa America, and Tony Ralston getting a well-deserved break after the Euros. I even suggested you play Stephen Welsh at right back because he has done in the past. Brendan opted for Deddy to play, and I thought he was brilliant in the first half. Shining light in the first half for me.
Yeah, I think so. I thought good pace, willing to go and take on his runner. I think there was one point in the first half where I thought he was kind of muscled off the ball. He's kind of a bit smallish in stature, again, which we know we've had issues on the other side with Greg Taylor. But of course, that could just be the FA camera angle, so I couldn't really tell. But yeah, again, a player I would like to see a bit more of in pre-season. I think if you're looking at, say, a third choice for a position, I would love it to come for the youth team. I would love it to come from the youth team or the B team. I think that's great. I want 2 really strong first and second choice picks for each position. But if you've got a third option there, someone that can get maybe some game time, come in and close out games that we're in control of, he looks a prime candidate for that. Again, tentatively based on a 45-minute cameo appearance. Let's be realistic. So let's see again if he's a player that gets some time over the next couple of pre-season games, and maybe he goes into that category of do we get him out on loan to go and develop. But you can't send the entire youth team and B team out on loan. So you have to really be selective about the players you think need and would mostly benefit from that level of development. But yeah, I would agree. I thought first half he was probably the standout of the young players, and I would say probably the third best player in the team outside of, I would say, probably Holm and Kyogo. Maybe Kuhn as well, who I thought actually contributed quite well in the first half.
He did. Kuhn still looks a little bit lightweight, but I mean, there's not a great deal he can do about that, to be fair. But yeah, I did think he looked what you would expect him to look in the first half.
I think the big difference between, if you compare the 2 halves, you look at Yang in the second half and Kuhn in the first half. Now, I don't think, in terms of what they actually created and produced and contributed to the game, was there wasn't a huge disparity there. But what I noticed in the first half was Kuhn was coming back. He was getting into positions. He was chasing the ball. He was making himself available. He was, you could see him visible on the pitch. In that second half, I could barely pick out Yang. Listen, I know the camera angle wasn't great, but it wasn't that bad. I could not pick out Yang. For me, he did not do enough to influence himself in the match and to as a relative senior player, compared to the rest of the guys on the pitch. Didn't do enough to go and drive and lead the team. So I was disappointed. So that's the only thing I would say about Kuhn, is there was much more of that from him when he was on than there was from Yang.
Well, I'm going to bring Gary Doonan into the equation here, because he says perspective. Some of these boys are playing under 18s last season, and most are playing 5th tier, playing versus air. It's a step up. And it is. And what I'm going to say about that is, this is probably why I'm focusing on maybe the performance of Yang, the departure very early on of Nawrocki, the performance of O, to a lesser degree the performance of Kwon, because these are guys that are, they're the senior pros within this group of players tonight, and they've got to do better. They've got to do better. I'm not going to have a dig at any of the young kids especially the ones that came out of the under-18s, who have come into this side tonight, 17 years of age. They've got a run out. It's all about experience. It's about building up their confidence. I'm pretty sure Brendan will work on that as well. Some of them hopefully will get another run out on Wednesday night. But when we look at the players like Yang and O, these guys are in and around the international team, and you're looking at them, and I totally agree with you with regards to Yang versus Kuhn in the first half. Kuhn was night and day, absolutely working for the ball. He wasn't perfect, didn't create a great deal. But there was 2 occasions, as I've said before, even though I've been a wee bit critical of Kwon, there was 2 pretty good balls he played down the right-hand side for Yang to run onto, and there was no delivery. And you've got to find your man. And the man in the middle was O. Yeah, and again, just flattered to see for me. And I think that if you can get £4 million for him, you take it every single day of the week. Tim, I'm not going to agree with this. I think there was a bit of quality. I think in the second half, I've named Lael. I think Agba showed signs. Yep. First half, Dede. And I'm also going to say in the first half, Holmes a player who, I don't know why disappeared from view last season, but he certainly did at a point disappear from the plans. Didn't get much game time near the end of the season. He showed flashes in the early parts. He's come in with a bit of a reputation. He's come in with the best part of 100 games, senior games, under his belt. But now it's a case of, again, a wee bit like looking at some of these guys like Lael. Are you good enough to actually get game time in the Celtic team this season? If not, I'm not prepared to sell these guys, Lael and Home. But I'd like to see them going out at a decent level and playing first-team football, Chris.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the one thing that stood out for me in the first half with Home in particular is what we said at the pre-match was there's guys there that have got something to prove and they should really go out there and take the chance. And I thought Home looked hungry. He looked like I've got something to prove. I mean, the pace, his reaction time to get on the ball, to win the penalty, took a sore one, which actually sometimes I quite like players who are willing to take a sore one for the team. So that was good to see, although you obviously don't want any injuries. I think Home, again, is a player I want to see a bit more of in pre-season. I said earlier, it was this week or last week, I've not seen enough from Home to make a judgment on his future, positively or negatively. I've just not seen enough from him. I don't think he's done anything majorly wrong, but he's not really stood out for me throughout the appearances last season. So he's still got a bit to prove, but he took a step towards that in a positive way tonight, I felt. So, yeah, Home for me. Let's see what he does in the next few pre-seasons, but I think there's a player there can develop. Similar with that, Agba, Lael, Kuhn, I think is still for me the best option on that right hand side. But I still want to see more from him. Let's make that really clear. I think the rest of the team picks up. The one player we've not really spoken about, Stephen Welsh, playing centrally. Stephen Welsh is at the point where he can't be always seen as a young up and coming player now. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more leadership from him in the defence in the first half. I felt he was a bit hesitant. He was a bit slow again. I want to see him be a bit more solid, and I don't know. He just always for me always looks like a second defender. He never looks like a guy who's willing to take the responsibility at the back. And I think he's got a bit to prove over pre-season and coming into the season. He's maybe a player that's fighting for his future, I would say.
There's been 3 occasions, Chris, whereby there were bids that came in for Stephen Welsh, and I think in terms of timing, one of the issues was Chris Julian at the time. We didn't know when Chris Julian was going to come back. The offers were coming in from Serie A. And then there was another occasion where it was Cameron Carter-Vickers. There was doubts around whether or not he was going to be fit. If it was to happen this pre-season and we got an offer for Stephen Welsh, is it time? Is it time for the player? Is it time for him to move on? I mean, I know that he signed a new deal last season. He signed a new deal under Brendan Rodgers. But I tend to agree with you. And he's a player who, I think in season 1 under Ange, looked as though he was progressing well, fell out of favour in season 2. Bit part player last season under Brendan Rodgers, albeit injury issues as well.
Yeah.
But I do tend to agree. I don't think he grasps it, the game or the opportunity at times to really step up. I've not seen that breakthrough performance by Stephen Welsh.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've said similar at Mikey Johnson. Now I know Mikey Johnson substantially more opportunities than well, there you go, more opportunities than Welsh. But I think Welsh is slowly falling into that category. We still think there's a player there comes in, does okay at times, but just doesn't take that step up and doesn't grasp that opportunity the way you'd hope he would. And he's a player potentially I think could go to another team, a bit like Mikey Johnson did by going down south and going to West Brom. Maybe Welsh needs to, for the sake of his own career, go to another team, get a consistent run, establish himself as that first choice centre back in a team, or part of that first choice central back partnership. I just don't know if he's going to do it at Celtic. I think that the time is running out for him to take that opportunity should it come across. And depending on what happens with recruitment this summer, we know that our defence is a priority area. He could find his chances limited against this again this season. I think if that happens, I don't necessarily see him progressing past his current level, and that's a shame because you always want to see a young Scottish player go on and really advance their career and their development. I'm getting to the stage where I think Welsh maybe needs to look at other options. Maybe it's a loan. Maybe it's a loan. Maybe it does. Mickey Johnson goes out on loan, and we see what we get there. But being in and out the team at Celtic, it's not. He's never going to be able to raise his game.
Where is Mikey Johnson? Maybe he's down talking to Norwich about the partnership deal that we've got for Ida happening as we speak. David Boyle, unacceptable. Can't even beat Air. Rodgers out. All joking aside, it's great to be back. I really look forward to tonight's game, and I've really enjoyed watching it and catching up with Chris, of course, and running through some of these comments as well. Andy Marshall, thanks for supporting Acsom. Agreed, I thought the centre-back was decent, as was the goalkeeper at the end. Yes, he certainly was. If there's one way to catch the eye, pull off a cracking save that makes sure you don't get beat. Tony Cassidy, excellent to see young Dane coming back in following his cruciate layoff. Nice big fella. We've lost so many players over the years. And I remember, when I was working on the Quality Street Gang, looking at some of the kind of tragic cases. Brian McLaughlin, the original Brian McLaughlin, super, really, really bad knee injury. Came back, played for Celtic, went on and had a career with United and Motherwell, but they reckoned he was going to be the best out the whole lot of them. And it was kind of curtailed by injury. John McCluskey, the brother of George, it was more of a blood disorder, I believe, that stopped him from fulfilling his potential. The record he made both of them made their debut when they were 16 for Celtic. They reckoned he was going to be a superstar, and then you move into the 1980s, and you've got guys like Stevie Murray, the second Stevie Murray that played for Celtic. We signed him for Nottingham Forest when Brian Clough was the manager. Played a reserve game against Motherwell and suffered nerve damage on his knee. It was a bad tackle that done him. And then, of course, John Kennedy. You've got John Kennedy with the injury he had. And, you hear about Dane Murray getting that horrible injury, and you just think, it's great tonight to see him coming back in. We've said it, Chris, and I can't overstate it enough. Absolutely sensate. You know what? Even if he doesn't go on to make it for Celtic and he goes on and plays elsewhere, the fact that he's come back from it is brought. And I know that we've advanced in relation to the treatment of that type of injury, but it's ended so many players' careers.
Absolutely. And, not even young guys coming through. I mean, I remember guys like Mark Reaper, Paul Elliott, two guys, when we talk about the lovely guys with dreadlocks. Paul Elliott, as a kid, was one of my favourite players. Just thought this huge, giant of a man and great player, and career ended by an injury. Mark Creeper,
Dean Saunders, I think, that ended Paul Elliott's career.
Right. That's right. Yeah. That's right. I've liked Dean Saunders ever since, but he was a player that I remember, and probably one of the first players I remember. I personally remember, having a career ended by injury. Somebody that I really, really followed. But Mark Creeper, another one who I thought was a tremendous player for us, but injury wrecked his career. Guys who were playing for us actually and doing a real good job. Morton Vicorst, Darren Jackson, two really bad injuries. And actually, just referencing one of our live events, the other week there, where we had Stan Petrov on stage, and I'm sure you'll obviously noticed it being on stage there, but the biggest cheer of the night was him talking about the game that he came to Parkhead, where he's in the midst of, I think, just following treatment for leukemia, and what it meant to him to come back after that time being a player, and that got the biggest cheer of the night, and it just shows how much these players mean to Celtic supporters, for being there. We never forget these guys. They brought so much success, so much happiness, and I thought it was a great moment to see Stan see that. So yeah, for young guys like Dane Murray, it's a short career, and they work so hard to get to that level and to have that opportunity, and you really, really want them to go on and make the most of it. So wonderful to see Dane back, and look, whatever the future holds for him in terms of his football career, whether it's at Celtic, whether he maybe doesn't break through at the first team and goes elsewhere, I really hope he has a good, long, sustained and injury-free career now. So great to see him back.
Brilliant to see him back. You're right. You mentioned Morton Vikhorst. The illness that he fought back from was it Guillain-Barré? Was that what
Guillain-Barré syndrome? Yeah.
That was unbelievable how he came back from that. And Darren Jackson with the brain injury. Obviously, you've had Jackie McNamara and Stan Petrov sharing a stage just last week with us, and they've came back post playing career. John Hartson as well. So absolutely. But in terms of the football injuries, great to see Dane back. Listen, guys, it was a 1-1 draw. It's pre-season. But there was an air last season. I mean, we're even wearing last season's strip tonight.
I'm not. Just pointing out.
You're not.
First opportunity I've had to wear it. I thought I'm getting it on.
Yeah. We're wearing last season's strip this evening. And the only real first pick you would say across the board was probably Kyogo, maybe Kuhn. On the park, so very much an experimental process of getting game time in the legs, but I'm glad we've done it. Jerry Taylor was there commentating for Ayr United Television, and he managed to get an interview with Brendan Rodgers. He'll be sending it over. We'll put it on the channel. We'll share it on the socials. And if you haven't done so already, go back and watch tonight's episode of This Is Acsom with David Elliott. David Elliott broke through under Billy McNeil, almost made it into the team for the 1989 Scottish Cup final. And there's a great story with David, actually, if you listen back to it, of the margins of making it versus leaving the football club. Brilliant.
And so pertinent for tonight. We're talking about youth and we're talking about seeing the young guys. It couldn't have been timed better, actually, the chat with Davey. So really, really good.
Yeah, we're going to be speaking to ex-Celts and those with a Celtic state of mind. You might have played 6 games or 600 games. If you played for Celtic, you'll be welcome on our show. So yeah, check it out.
We've got to get Jerry on then as a guest.
Jerry, yeah. Maybe Bruni, although we did share Bruni's kangaroo story earlier on today.
We did, I saw that.
Which was great. But yeah, thanks everybody for getting involved. Give us a big thumbs up. We're coming to Glasgow. We're going to Grangemouth. We're going to Greenock. There are tickets on sale. Acsom Live. We are going to be bringing Lubo and Mialby, Joe Ledley, Charlie Mulgrew, and others onto a live stage, and all the ticket details are underneath this video. Thanks everybody for getting involved. Thank you once again, Chris McElwain, for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.